Hi, it's Jasmine. You know, that girl who did you know what way before the internet ever existed. Join me and my special guest every week as we talk about anything and everything because nothing is too taboo. So punch your ticket and get on board the crazy train with me, Jasmine St. Clair. All aboard! Welcome to a new episode of Crazy Train Podcast with me, Jasmine St. Clair. My next guest is someone I've been dying to speak to for about a year. The first time I ever laid eyes on her is when I was watching a CPAC conference at home, and I see this hot girl, like with cowboy boots on and tan legs and a cowboy hat, and it was Lila Hart, the comic. So she has a lot to say about her documentaries that she's been doing, one specifically dealing with voter fraud, which I know no matter which side of the fence you're on, we should all be concerned about it. And also about her journey as a comic in LA, sorority houses, and just everything growing up. But she was a lot of fun to speak with and a complete fireball of energy. So let's welcome Lila Hart. So one of my biggest moments is when I saw you on I think it's CPAC or a TPUSA event. I see this like hot little, like this chick with these white cowboy boots on, right? Legs and a cowboy hat. I'm like, wait a second, who is this? And you're like right next to Steve Bannon. How did that don't tell me you met Mike Lindell yet, because if you did, I'm so jealous.
I did.
Oh my God. Okay. Where'd you meet Mike Lindell?
I met him at CPAC, actually. I met Steve and Mike at CPAC. We were promoting the film my husband and I made, which is American History of Voter Fraud. This is where Landslide Lila, this is my merch, Landslide Lila is a line from that movie, but we talk about the 200 years of voter fraud in America. And so going to CPAC, I was there to promote the film and I got to meet them, which was awesome. But I never, Jasmine, I wasn't, here's what's interesting. So I'm a stand-up comedian. My husband also does stand-up comedy. And we met doing stand-up in Los Angeles. And it was never my plan to get into politics, okay? I mean, but it is kind of funny how that worked out because I went to Washington State University. I do have a degree in broadcast journalism with a minor in political science. So it's kind of funny how the world, how, you know, life is funny and it works in mysterious ways. But anyways, I started stand-up in 2016, and that's when I met my husband. And we made our film because of everything that happened in 2020. Making the film is what was able to get me back on stage.
It's a big deal. And a lot of people, like even my Republican friends, oh, there's no voter fraud. I worked at the polls for the midterms here in California. I was fired after, I think, the third day because I chased a guy down the street who had his mail-in ballot and he didn't turn it in. And you didn't even have ID on you. And they still let you vote here.
Yeah.
You were in California for how long?
So I was there for 10 years and we left September of 2021. So I'll let you know, I'll let your audience know what happened to me. So basically, prior to the pandemic, I was out performing 4 nights a week, going to mics, going to shows, performing at the Comedy Store, Laugh Factory, Hollywood Improv, doing all of that. And August 29th of 2021, I had the biggest show of my life, which was at the Ford Amphitheater in Los Angeles. I performed in front of 800 people. It was the most amazing show. There were 10 performers there. I was the only unvaccinated performer. So I had to have they had me take a COVID test. It was the only COVID test that I took the entire pandemic and since. And the only reason I did take it is because this was such a big opportunity for me. And I really wanted to perform, especially after I hadn't been on stage for, nearly a year. And so to get this opportunity to perform at the Ford Amphitheater, I was like, okay, fuck it. I'll take the damn test. Okay. So I took the test. I also had a medical exemption because in 2017, I had a ovarian cyst on my left ovary. And they actually, I only have one ovary because they had to remove the entire ovary in 2017. And that's when I found out that I was very much prone to blood clotting. So, with all the vaccine side effects and everything that we know about it, the blood clots. So I was able to get my medical exemption. But frankly, I just didn't want to take the shit. Okay. So I get the medical exemption. I perform at the Ford Amphitheater. I have an amazing show. I mean, they even wrote about it in the LA Times. If you look up the LA Times, they had this whole article about me doing the show and then after the show. So then 3 days later, I went to the Comedy Store on Sunset, okay? And I had my negative COVID test, my medical exemption paperwork, and I had just got, back from performing at this amazing show in LA. I get to the Comedy Store and they are mandating the vaccine. You have to have your vaccine passport to get into the Comedy Store. And I couldn't believe it, because I had been going to the Comedy Store for a few years and no one's ever really checking my ID because they know me there, right? But I get there and I get stopped by security and they're like, Lila, okay, do you have your vaccine card? And I was like, no, but I do have a medical exemption and I do have a negative COVID test in my purse here. So they call a manager. Okay. And they have me standing outside for like 30 minutes before the manager gets there. And they're like, Lila, okay, so here's the thing. We can't let you in because everybody that comes in here has to have, a vaccine passport. And they're like, but what we can do is we can take your medical paperwork and we can file it. And then in 3 days, you could get in there. And how insane is that, Jasmine, that they want to take your paperwork? And I just feel like it's like, the fact that I even have to disclose all of this medical information out to people. And here's the thing. I have spina bifida and scoliosis. So I was born with a congenital birth defect. And what's so crazy to me about this vaccine, right? Wasn't this supposed to protect people like me, the most vulnerable? Yet now here I am not being allowed into the Comedy Store. So then, as I'm getting told that I can't come in and that I can come back in 3 days, I was like, well, I don't really want to give you my medical paperwork. So I'm not going to do that. The manager leaves and then the bouncer at the door, he says to me, he's like, Lila, you should have just shown me a fake vaccine card and I would have let you in. So then I find out, oh, wow. So a majority of you comedians don't even believe in this vaccine. You're just going along with this tyranny. You have these fake vaccine cards. And it's like, how dare you promote this to your fans who trust you, So what I ended up doing was I made a video where I let everybody know. I was like, hey, I was just rejected from being access to the Comedy Store. And I posted this video on Instagram and Twitter. And it kind of it created a lot of buzz within the stand-up comedy community. And Chrissy Mayer, so one of my dear friends, she reached out to me and her and I had never connected before this, but she was the first person to reach out to me and ask me to be on her podcast to talk about this. And what was so crazy was just a couple months prior to that, I remember seeing Chrissy Mayer's tweet where she had tweeted that she would not be performing at any comedy clubs that required the vaccine, mandate. And I remember seeing that tweet and being like, wow, this woman is so incredibly brave for speaking out. And then for a couple months later, for this to happen to me and for her to reach out to me and have me on her show. So she has me on her podcast and it was great. And it was kind of the first time I was really talking about this, right? Well, 2 weeks later, my husband and I decided that we're just going to leave Los Angeles. If I'm not going to be allowed into the Comedy Store, if I'm not going to be allowed at the Hollywood Improv, if I'm not going to be allowed into Laugh Factory, because all these places are requiring these mandates, then we're just going to leave. So we moved to Texas. And Chrissy actually was headlining at Hyenas, and she asked me to feature for her. And so these last couple of years, I've been featuring for her, which has been awesome.
I love Chrissy. Someone told me, oh yeah, you guys could probably talk conspiracy theories and blah, 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 get along. And this specific person hates her. I'm like, why do you hate her? What did she ever do to you? Do you know her? Well, she was there on January 6th. I'm like, okay, well, good for her. I'm kind of jealous. I wish I was there that day. Instead, I watched it from my TV and I see this decrepit old alcoholic woman getting up slowly but surely when she hears that there's something going on, so there's so many different things behind it. It's a whole other, topic. but I support people in entertainment coming out, especially you. And did you lose a lot of fans, you feel, when you came out? And by the way, I have to say that is disgusting what the Comedy Store did to you. That's humiliating. And they let
Yeah.
these untalented hacks get up there. These little girls, oh my God, who's the big comedian that I could blow this time? You know, that wanna like blow the Chris Delias and these other people just to get 2 minutes up there with shitty material. You know, it is
Oh my gosh, I love
humiliating.
you. You're
Shame on
so
them. It's
funny.
true. And he looks like an egg, by the way, that Chris, whatever his name is. But yes, did you lose a lot of fans coming out?
Oh, absolutely. And so the crazy thing was is when I got to Texas, I went on another podcast. There was a show called You Are Here. It was with Elijah Schaefer and Sydney Watson. So Chrissy had her show at Hyenas in Dallas, right? And so she calls me and she's like, Lila, can you come feature for me? And I'm like, absolutely. I get out there and a bunch of people from The Blaze were in the audience. Elijah Schaefer was in the audience. Sydney Watson, my good friend Brittany Venti, who I had met that night, was in the audience. And so after the show, they come up to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you were so funny. We had to fly you out back to Texas and interview you on the show." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you don't even have to fly me out. Like you can just, I live here now." So about 2 weeks later, I was on the show. And the funny thing is, Jasmine, they invited me on thinking I was going to be this funny comedian, right? And I was actually a cry median because I couldn't stop crying because it was the first time that I was being public about my feelings, where I said that I didn't believe in the mask mandates. I believe that the vaccine was poison and it was killing people. And that and I knew that a lot of my friends who were watching this, were probably, I knew that they weren't going to be happy about it, because here's the thing. In Los Angeles, I wouldn't wear the mask if I was out with my husband. The only time I would wear the mask if was when I was around my friends, and it was to make them feel comfortable, so I really kind of felt like Anne Frank with my thoughts. I could not, it was very like suffocating. I couldn't speak out. So the first time I was on this, big podcast and I was publicly speaking out about it, it was kind of cathartic. Like, I it was like the tears were flowing, but it kind of felt like this release as well. And so that day after the podcast came out, I lost 6,000 followers on Instagram. 6,000. Okay. Not only did I lose 6,000 followers, I got a ton of messages from people who were my friends, people who had, some of my fans who've been following me for, it makes me emotional now, but like some of my fans have been following me for a long time, telling me how horrible of a person I was, how I wanted people to die. And it was really, really awful. So I kind of went through like, we moved into our house. We moved to Texas, September of 2021, and all of 21 and half of 22, I was really in this kind of like depression, because you have to understand, like, I left Los Angeles. I moved to Texas to a brand new scene. I'm first publicly coming out about this stuff. I basically feel like I'm blacklisted from Hollywood, because even though a lot of comedians agreed with me, they didn't want to publicly speak out and say, "Oh yeah, Lila's right," because they themselves have, they have fake vaccine cards, or, they're going along with things, right? So my husband, who I'm just so grateful for, he's incredibly smart. He did all of the research, did all of the editing, for our movie American History of Voter Fraud, and he's the one who really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And us making the movie is what was able to get me back on stage, because I was invited on to more podcasts, and then God rewards bravery. And I also have to give a shout out to Sam Tripoli. He had me on his podcast to talk about, my husband and I, we've made several films, American History of Voter Fraud, World Death Organization, which is the history of eugenics and basically talks about why all vaccines are really dangerous. We made 2 Hours of Dick, the Dick Gregory story, and Up the Rivers, Joan Rivers. And those can all be found at lilahart.com/documentary. But yeah, Sam Tripoli had me on his podcast to talk about World Death Organization. And that was really, really huge, because it was like, now I feel like people are really waking up more and are kind of understanding that, hey, like, if we continue to be silent about this, if we continue to not talk, it's only going to get worse. And when people are like, oh, how is all this crazy stuff happening? It's like the 2020 election was stolen. What do you mean? How is this all this crazy stuff was happening? Like Joe Biden's not the real freaking president here. Hello.
No, he's not. We all know that. Well, people with sense, at least. Yeah, I mean, it's very productive you did that. It's been really hard to come out. I know that someone accused me of probably being a white supremacist and groundlings right now, because these kids aren't following me on my Instagram, but they know my name. They're looking shit up and they're seeing things like those wrestling promos I was doing. And then my mom, I remember as of late, said that someone's going to lock me up in a straitjacket and throw me away, because all I said from day one, these people are coming for your kids, meaning the government, meaning the transgender people who are trying to push kids into taking hormone therapy and mutilate their genitals. I think Abel Garcia is somewhere in Texas these days, but he's a friend of mine. He's a detransitioner. And you see all this stuff. I love Abel. I love him to death, and he's so strong. But the whole thing with masks and comedy, so I have a one-woman show, and I know I lost half my audience in New York City because of Vax cards. How do you wear a mask and enjoy comedy? Is there any way to do this? Did people do that at your show? Did they stand 6 feet away to get an autograph from you? Like, how did that work? Did they even have masks in Texas?
So here's the thing. The best thing that I love about Texas, it's really a live and let live. And I feel like when we first got out here too, like I had suffered so much like PTSD from being in California during 2020 and half of 2021, that it was like, it took me about a year to be like, oh, okay, like everybody here is kind of just, it's live and let live. Like, even if you have different opinions, it's not how it is in California, where it's very culty and people will just stop being your friend or stop talking to you or just demonize you completely. And it's just, I mean, Jasmine, it is just so wild to me. Okay, I got to tell you this other story that happened to me. This was my breaking point, my mask breaking point. So, this was June of 2021. I was at Starbucks. Okay, I was with my friend at Starbucks, and she was one of my friends who I would wear the mask around just to make her feel comfortable, because I hadn't really like outed myself on, my feelings on things, because I was afraid that the friendship would be, and God, it's so sad. Isn't that sad that you have
It is. I've lost a lot of friends. Yeah.
So I go to Starbucks with her, and we're both wearing the mask. We're standing in there, and I just take off my mask. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. And she kind of looks at me like, oh my God, Lila, what are you doing? I'm like, whatever. And so I order my coffee, Jasmine. Okay. I order my coffee, and the lady accepts my order. And then we're standing there, and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good. I'm like not wearing my mask. No one's saying anything. All of a sudden, she's making my drink. And she goes, ma'am, you need to put on your mask. And I was like, just finish making the drink. And she's like, no, you need to put on your mask. And I was like, would you rather I get my money back? Because I'm not putting my mask on. So I can get my money back and you don't have to finish making the drink. I'll do that, even though that's going to take longer, but I'll do that. And she was like, yeah, you can get your money back. So I get back in line. The other cashier is giving me my money back, right? This 6 foot tall man walks in. He's not wearing a mask. She takes his order. Okay, she takes his order, and I look at them and I'm like, so are you guys just picking and choosing who you're going to pick on? Because he's not wearing a mask and you're not getting him shit for it. And you just let him order his drink and you're making me give you my money back. And then she looks at the man and she's like, sir, could you put on your mask? And this fucker puts his mask on. And I go, are you fucking kidding me? And then I kind of break out into this like speech, and I'm like, how long are we going to do this? These masks don't work. How long are we going to do this? And there was a lady in the back with her child, and she was kind of cheering me on, like, yes, please, finally somebody. Then a guy, this overweight man with 2 masks on, comes into my face and he's like, you are the reason people are dying. You're killing people. And then another guy with a mask on, he was like, I own a business and we need to respect these businesses. And I'm like, this is fucking Starbucks. Okay. This is Starbucks. This is not like the same as like a home business or something. What the hell? And so at that point, my friend is like, staring at me like, what the fuck, Lila? And I look at her and I'm like, okay, we got to go somewhere else because I'm going to get my coffee. I'm still going to get my coffee and I'm going to find another place that's going to allow me to walk in there with no mask. And, you know, sure enough, we go to Air One and they let me in and they let me order the coffee. So, you know, it was fine. But I knew at that moment that something in our friendship had changed. And it really broke my heart, Jasmine. Like, because I remember, you know, she was like, what was that? Why did you do that? And I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to wear the mask anymore. I'm sick of it. And just like, it just makes me so sad because I had known right there that something had changed, you know?
Yeah, but it's your personal choice. And at the end of the day, and I tell people this all the time, why do you care like who I voted for? I don't care who you voted for. I'm not going to make you pay my gas money, but I think what matters at the end of the day is how you treat people. And that's really what it comes down to. Who cares about your politics? Who cares about the stupid mask? I wish I was there. I would have told that guy with the 2 masks, the reason you're unhealthy is because of your body. Look at yourself. Then you have this mask. You don't let any oxygen to your brain. The amount of fights I've gotten into in the street with people many times, and I would wear my mask below my nose. And there was a guy in CVS yelling at me who's like all the way at the front of the store. I told him to shut his vagina. I said, you need to shut your vagina. Just shut your vagina and don't tell me anything about a mask. So I think I offended him somehow, but like the mask was offensive and everyone that wore it had really bad acne. Did you break out by any chance?
Okay, so
I did not want
the
to wear
mask that I had for a little bit that I did wear, it was I ordered this thing on Amazon. It was like a safari hat. And it had like a little thing. So I looked like I was going on a damn safari. That's what I was wearing. Okay. When I was wearing it, it was just like this little sombrero with like a little covering. So I don't know. The whole thing was crazy. I remember also one time too, I was at a gas station and they didn't want to like give me gas. I didn't have my mask on. So like I just took my shirt and I put it above my face and then they were like cool with that. I'm like, people have lost their goddamn minds, Jasmine. And to go back to what you're saying about, you said it should be how you treat people. It should be how, your actions there. That's why it broke my heart so much when I lost so many fans, like 6,000 in one day, because it was like nothing about me had changed. Nothing about me had changed except for the fact that I said, I don't believe in these masks and I think these vaccines are a scam. And then, oh my God, now Lila's evil. But it's like all the years that you had followed me, all the years that you had supported me, all the inspiration that I had given you, all of a sudden that's null. That's nothing because you don't believe in the mask, Lila. And how dare you? You're so evil and you're killing people. And it's like, no, the government is killing people. Fauci is killing people. This is a whole freaking scam,
Yeah.
And it's like, Jasmine, I'm 4'6" with like a fucking spinal cord injury from birth. And I still have a bigger spine than most of these fucking people.
Oh, no, you do. And yeah, you have bigger balls than like any guy in LA. That's not saying much because a lot of them are liberals, and they just, when I was on a dating profile a few years back when this was going on, it said, if you are a liberal or a Democrat, please swipe left. I already have a vagina. So therefore, I maybe had like 2 people message me and these guys lie about their height. They lie about all these things. It's like, yeah, later, I'm good. I got off of that real fast. But getting back to the whole mask thing, people had the liberty to go up to people in the street. Like I've had people come up to me, oh, you're killing people, blah, blah, blah. And they want to say something. They're going to say it because you seem like you are approachable. Plus you're a petite woman. You're 4'6", you're spinner size. I'm sorry. I have to say, I'm so sorry. I know
you're the best. You're so funny.
I had to. She's just, yeah, I was like, yeah, she's a spinner. It's so cool, but she's so adorable. When I saw you and then I remember you talking about the documentary, and I'm still jealous you met Mike Lindell, by the way. So how did you even get started with comedy of all things? Because LA is such a big base of things to do.
So, okay, so I'll go back to my history with that. So basically, like I said, my degree is in broadcast journalism with a minor in political science. My dream, Jasmine, was always to be a news anchor because sitting behind a news desk like this, you'd have no idea that I was 4'6" or that, I walk with a limp and I have my disability and I could hide it, right? Me 12 years ago would have loved this Zoom era of life. Okay. I could be catfishing everybody. I would have loved this. Okay. But anyways, I started stand-up because when I first moved down to LA, I would send in my headshots because I wanted to get into acting and I would do all this stuff. And I would send in my headshots and everybody would love it. But then I would show up and then I felt like I was being very discriminated against because of my disability. And what's really wild to me is like, I really think it's wonderful now that we're so accepting of people with disabilities. But when I was coming up like 12 years ago, that was not the case. In fact, when I was in university, I went to Washington State and I really wanted to be in a sorority because being in a sorority is like the ultimate cool thing. Like you're accepted by all the girls and all of that, right? Well, I did the sorority rushing. And at the end of the sorority rushing week, none of the houses wanted me. Okay. And I knew it in my heart that it probably had something to do with my disability, right? Because there was no other like disabled people on my campus. I didn't even see other little people or just anybody with really like disabilities or anything like that. And sure enough, 4 years later, my senior year of college, I'm at a party and this drunk girl comes up to me and she's crying and she's like, guilt confessional. And she tells me, she's like, Lila, I just have to tell you, like, I feel so guilty, but none of the houses wanted you because we didn't want to be known as the house with a crippled girl. And I remember Jasmine, like walking home from the party and calling my mom, and like crying, like, I mean, it makes me cry now just like thinking about it, but being like, wow, like all I wanted was to be accepted and then to just be known that like, oh, I'm too crippled to be part of this sorority stuff, right? So anyways, it's so funny how like when you think about certain memories, like even though like I'm so different from that girl I was back then, it can kind of bring back those.
But you're cooler than those girls anyway. Like you could choose your own friends. You never needed to be a part of sorority then. So God had his own plans for you, but just not
Yes.
that. Yeah.
So, also it's like I had a really hard time accepting my disability. Like I always hid it. I never wanted to talk about it. I wouldn't tell people that I had spina bifida. I mean, Jasmine, I used to tell people that the reason I was small was because I was born premature. And like, that doesn't even make sense because premature babies like grow up to become normal. So I don't know why in my mind that sounded better than saying I have spina bifida and scoliosis. I was like, no, I was just born premature. And then I stayed premature.
Hey,
But,
anything goes.
and I also, it was like dating was really hard for me too, because I had a lot of guys who would say things like, Lila, you're really pretty, but I can't date you because I don't want my friends to make fun of me for being with a midget. I had guys say that to my face. And so I started stand-up comedy because I had this epiphany one day. I remember it was February 10th of 2016. I was in my room in LA and I had this epiphany. And also that happens to be my sister's birthday, February 10th. And I realized it was like, you know what? No one's going to hire you as the 4'6" love interest on a soap opera. But if you became a comedian, they would write parts in for you. So that day, I got on my computer. I looked up open mics in Los Angeles and I found that Flappers open mic. I got dressed up. I put on a gold dress. Well, I got there like 2 hours early and I sat there and when my name got called, I got on stage. I did my first jokes and ever since that moment, I was completely hooked because there was something so powerful about going on stage and, talking about my spina bifida, taking back the power from M-word midget, right? I call myself the baddest midget bitch. And it was like, it really transformed my life. And the craziest part is I met my husband doing stand-up. We met at an open mic. The first time he saw me, I was on stage. You know what they say? It's like you find love when you truly learn to love yourself. And it's like comedy really did that for me. It healed so many parts of me. And I remember being at the Hollywood Improv like 3 years into my comedy career. And I remember standing there and it was the first time I felt completely grateful for my spina bifida, completely grateful for my disability in the sense of like, oh, this is, you know what? If I wasn't born with this disability, I wouldn't be doing stand-up. And I love stand-up so much that I would go through all of that shit that I went through to get to this point, right? So, to me, stand-up has just been an amazing journey. It's healed so many parts of my life, and it's also given me so much. I would not have the life I have today if I never got on the stand-up stage for the first time. And I've always been like a storyteller. Like even before I started stand-up, that was like people would always come up to me and be like, "Are you some sort of comedian?" Because I like to talk to people. I remember one time I was telling my mom, I was like, man, my dream job, this is before I even knew about stand-up, I was like, my dream job would be like, if I could just like talk to people, I would love that because that's what I like to do. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for it because like I said, it just healed a lot for me.
It's really some of the darkest things that turn into, the base for most of our talents and things that really put us out there, and I commend you for just getting up on stage like that, because I suffer from stage fright like big time. Then I started taking classes at like UCB, then the Second City Conservatory, like all the way through grad review. Then I had the one woman show, and like the first night I'm on stage, I mean, you get that thing, like, you're dry mouth and you're like shaking and you're just really nervous. And it's like, okay, so like I calmed down and I got over that. But going into a New York City crowd where half your audience is missing because of that rat face who mishandled the AIDS crisis and his advice, get vaccines. He does look like a rat. It's like, and I'm pretty sure he's the one that mishandled the AIDS crisis during the 90s as well, or 80s, 90s, yes. So it's this whole, it's just taken so much out of us. And now you have, we're faced with cancel culture. And that's another thing. You can't, I think you're uncancelable at this point. And do you think have you really toned down your jokes because of cancel culture, or have you just kept doing whatever you want to do? Be free.
So even before all this 2020 stuff, in 2016, I got invited to perform for the Little Women. I was on an episode of Little Women LA. Have you seen the show before? Little Women?
I know the show. That's it.
Yeah. So I remember watching Little Women LA when I was in college and being totally inspired by these ladies, because I'm like, I'm the same size as them. And, I always thought like, how cool would it be to meet them? And then, I started stand up and the show reached out to me to have me perform for the girls. And I was so excited, Jasmine. I performed for the girls. I remember right before I was about to get on stage, I remember thinking like, Lila, are you gonna do your midget jokes? Are you gonna do them? Like, and I was like, because in my head, I was thinking it might be offensive. But right before I got on stage, I was like, no, because I believe in these jokes. And here's how I can tell you the difference between a good joke and a bad joke. If you have a joke, let's say about people in wheelchairs, right? A good joke is you could say that joke in a room full of people and they're all in wheelchairs. And it's a good joke if you can make those people laugh, right? If you can't do the joke in front of the people that it's going to offend the most, then it's not a freaking good joke and you don't believe in it. So I was like, no, I believe in these jokes. I'm going to do it. And so I go out there, I do my set, and the joke that I do is, like I said, what the bit is, I'm not a midget, I'm Filipina. Okay, that's the line. I'm not a midget, I'm Filipina, right? Which hilarious, gets a big laugh, whatever. And I after the show, I go out to meet the girls, and I'm so excited, Jasmine. I'm like, oh, finally, I'm so excited to meet them. And I sit down, and the first thing they say to me is, they're like, so you like to use the M word in your stand-up? And I'm like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. Here they are reprimanding me for using the M word, saying midget. And I have to explain to them, hey, I am not using this word to offend you. I'm using this word because it's a word that used to offend me. It's a word that used to hurt my feelings, and I'm saying this so that I can take the power back from it. And we ended up having like an hour and a half long discussion, which they cut down to like, a minute and 20 seconds. But the one thing I'm really proud of myself is the fact that I did not apologize. I didn't say that, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do the joke anymore because it offended you. And this is in 2016. So I guess that was like my first kind of taste of like trying to, my first taste of like what it's kind of like to like, the mob kind of going after you, because you have to imagine I'm sitting there and they're all telling me how horrible my jokes are and how I shouldn't be doing that kind of stand-up, and how, when you have people like us in the audience, Lila, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm like, and I thought back and I was like, I thought I should be doing it more because you guys would understand it and think it's even more hilarious because you are in the audience. And that's why I did it. I did the jokes for you. If I thought that they were truly offensive, I wouldn't have done it, but I believe in these jokes and I did it. So I was really proud of myself for that. But yeah, it was pretty shocking to me, Jasmine, to have them tell me that my jokes offended them. And I remember, after the show, I went to the Hollywood Improv and I was like, oh man, I was so emotional. I was crying over it. I was like, I can't believe they didn't like me. And I felt really bad, but I was like, it made me actually want to work harder and write even more jokes. And you know, and in a lot of ways, I think it kind of prepared me for a lot of the kind of cancel stuff I've gone through now, because, you know, you can't bow down to the mob. You can't, if you do that, it's like anything can offend anybody. And like I said, I wasn't doing these jokes to hurt their feelings. In fact, before I started stand up, about 2 weeks before I started stand up, I went to the Laugh Factory, okay? And I watched Adam Ray perform. And he was on stage and he was doing a joke about his midget friend, Brad Williams. And he said, my midget friend, and the joke is about something about his midget friend like banging somebody in the closet. And I remember sitting there, okay, Jasmine, I'm sitting there like in my seat, like shaking, like, oh my God, everybody in this comedy club is going to think the midget he's talking about is me. Because I was so insecure, you know, I was like, everybody's going to think the midget he's talking about is me, and they're all going to think they're all going to be staring at me, even though he's clearly talking about Brad Williams, a man banging someone in the closet, not me sitting there in the comedy club. But I'm being so insecure, right? There's something internally going on with me. So after the show, my friend that I was with was like, Lila, you should go up to Adam and you should say to him, you know, that joke offended you. And I was like, no, I need to figure out what the hell is going on with me that's making me feel so goddamn insecure. And then 2 weeks later, I became a comedian, and I figured it out.
You know, half the time it's not even you that has the problem with it, it's other people. But because maybe one person in the group of those girls, those ladies, the little ladies felt offended, they got the others involved. Well, come on, let's go up there and let's tell her, like, this is bad, this is not right. And that's usually how it works out. I'm sure that maybe one or two of them in the group didn't really care. And it's a shame. I mean, Hollywood, we're just so stuck with the same content over and over at these comedy clubs. You get dick jokes from every little jock that's out there, and then you get these jokes from these girls. Well, like when I was 16, like my uncle raped me, and like my mom fingered, look, whatever it is, it's like, I'm sick of hearing, well, I just hate that voice. And it's like, I'm sorry, I know I sound horrible. Every other
You're so
person,
funny.
but it's true though, and it's the same jokes over and over. So it's refreshing, because if you can't laugh at yourself, you've got nothing. And that's really what it is at the end of the day, or that's what I want to think it is. I think it's refreshing. You met someone that has the same political beliefs as you. And I think a lot of people have come over to that side when we started seeing the whole thing with kids coming up.
Yeah.
Just a curiosity, there's a question. Do you think there's anything wrong with the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing?
I find it very interesting how he has been so pushed up by the algorithm. I mean, here's my theory on it. I feel like he started this as a joke. Okay. I feel like he started it as some sort of, day one of being a girl, da da da. But then as it grew, as the algorithm pushed it up, as all these companies, it's like now it's become a thing where it's so lucrative for him, and I feel like there's a bigger agenda that's happening, and they want to really like normalize this transgenderism. And you want to hear a crazy conspiracy that I have that's like super crazy? I'm like, what if like they want to normalize transgenderism so much so that like when Michelle Obama comes out as Michael, and then she can run it, or he can run as president?
No, I agree. It's not a conspiracy theory. And I respect you for calling Dylan him. I just think that he is doing another version of the movie Tootsie, which is one of my favorite movies. He didn't cut his thing off. He has not taken any type of hormone suppressors or whatever they take at that age. He doesn't have any implants. So are you just dressing up women and like suppressing us? Then you have the whole fourth wave feminists speaking like in support of these people.
What's so crazy to me is like, you would never see this on the male side. You would never see a woman become a man and get so propped up by men. And it's funny how women are so easily manipulated that we're like, here we are supporting and propping up Dylan. Okay. Men would never allow a woman to infiltrate their shit the way that we have allowed Dylan to infiltrate and to take these sponsorships and to parade around. being a woman, I mean, the fact that Drew Barrymore is like getting on her knees and being like, wow, you are so brave. I mean, you can clearly see that Dylan is a man, and the side, it's just, it's very concerning to me that we have just propped up this person, but it goes to show that like people are so easily manipulated, you know. And like you said, I don't think he really is transgender. I really don't. And again, it's not, I feel like he's doing this because it's very lucrative. I mean, he's making a lot of money, he's getting a lot of support, I mean, he's getting a lot of attention. He's always wanted to have that kind of attention. Nothing really has changed about him. If you look at videos of him from the past when he was a regular gay man, it's just all that's changed. It's like he has a wig on and he wears female clothing.
Yeah, when Drew Barrymore like got on the ground, at first I'm like, wait, is she trying to blow him? Like, what's she trying to do now? But it's to put him in the safe space on the ground. Okay, I get it, fine. But I mean, it's just none of these girls see it. It's a man suppressing a woman, and you have serious emotional issues when you want to be something else. You can't accept yourself. So why should we accept you?
Yeah. I also just feel like too, it's like, okay, if Dylan wants to dress like that and be like that, that's one thing. But the fact that he's being so promoted and shoved in everybody's faces. And okay, when you think about censorship, okay, shadow banning is real. Censorship is so real. And I say this, I'm like, you know, people only care about censorship when it's happening to them. You know, it's just like disability. Nobody wants to talk about disability until it's happening to somebody that you know or love, you know. And it's like the same thing with censorship. And it's like the fact that Dylan is being so shoved in everybody's faces, it's like it's so clearly being shown here that there is an agenda. It's like, it's very sick. And if you speak out against vaccines, if you speak out against the mask, if you speak out against Fauci, you do all these things. Like my husband's Twitter account was banned for 3 months after we released World Death Organization. Okay, for 3 months he was not able to post anything, and he wasn't able to get his account back till like Elon Musk got a hold of, you know, Twitter. But even then it took like another month. And it's like, how is that fair when people like Dylan can talk about being a girl and then all of his shit is just completely in your face? They don't want to, you know what it is? It's, Jasmine, it's that they want to promote lies and they want to suppress the truth. And this is the biggest, Dylan Mulvaney is the biggest example of promoting lies because he's not a woman. He doesn't even really want to be a woman. And they are promoting this big lie, shoving this lie in your face while they suppress the truth on everything else. And this is what makes me laugh. People are like, how could this happen? How could Dylan Mulvaney happen? Because the 2020 election was stolen and not enough people have spoken out. What do you mean, how could this happen? You're really shocked? Are you really shocked?
Oh, we all knew, anyone with half a brain knew it was stolen. And this Dylan thing, he wants to be a woman, fine. I'll just Lorena Bobbitt him if he really wants to be a woman. We can go that way. Seriously. I mean, now that I get called out on castings, you know, I see it on the other end and the back end that the agency some things. And whenever they ask for a biological woman to audition, they're inviting trans, they're encouraging them. So you're going to encourage a biological male who might be mentally ill or probably is mentally ill to audition for the same role. So why the hell am I even here? Because I know you're going to pick them. That already happened to me once or twice, actually. There's an episode of Saved by the Bell. They wanted a specific soccer type mom who's picking up the kid after school and flirts with the coach. They took it in a whole other direction. And it's being shoved in our faces because they're going after kids. They dismantle the nuclear American family by going after the most vulnerable component that's there, which are kids. You know, I don't have kids, but I should be involved in the school board somehow because I see it going on. And you have parents that don't have a lot of money that cannot afford to send their kids to school, private school, or put them in a viable after school program. So it's also targeting people of different, I guess, financial backgrounds. I know last summer I saw the parties going on in Texas. And I think when I started getting really crazy about this whole thing is when I saw it's like a 12-year-old girl sitting down and it was a grown man, okay, no boob implants, but a long rainbow colored wig, and what else? And a bikini lap dancing for her. Now
Oh my
that's a grown
God.
man sexually assaulting a minor female in a federally funded school. And it's above and beyond me that just people think it's okay. Have you ever been knocked off the bill at a show because the tranny was going to perform, or they had like, it was this night or that night and you're a biological female? I mean, I feel like we're going to get discriminated against soon if we aren't.
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely. And again, what's funny to me is that men would not allow a biological woman to infiltrate their spaces, but for some reason, women are just okay with men infiltrating our stuff. It's really sick. It's sad.
Well, if you've ever watched them, I watch a lot of old movies. Victor, Victoria, Julie Andrews, it was the opposite of Tootsie. Julie Andrews pretended to be a man who got a role in some kind of big theater production in the film, then later on came out as a woman. So it's the opposite of what Dustin Hoffman did, but that's just, I get obsessed by these movies, probably because it's theater and it's acting. So I get very obsessed and like immersed in it, but I know every single line in those films. Now getting to the whole documentary you did on the election fraud, how long did that take to put together?
About the research, we had started doing the research when we first got to Texas. So, but probably in total, like 6 months.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
quick. What
Yes.
did you find?
You'll have to have my husband on because gosh, you would love him. He, like I said, he did the soul research and everything, but the election fraud has been happening for over 200 years, and the whole point of why, this is another thing, the whole point of why they had the COVID lockdowns is because they wanted everyone to do the mail-in ballots. And that was like the easiest way to, have people vote multiple times. Even at my townhouse in Los Angeles, we got 15 ballots sent to our house with different names like John Smith, Michael, whatever, just like different names that were so generic. And I'm like, if I'm getting 10 to 15 of these at my place, which I could easily fill out, this is happening everywhere. I mean, it also, there was like an increase of like 70% mail-in ballots than we've never had before. But yeah, it's been happening. It happens every election cycle. Voter fraud does happen. So people don't want to talk about it again, because if you spoke about it in 2020, 2021, like now, it's kind of crazy how now you can kind of say certain things, but like back then, like literally your whole channel would be nuked. So imagine all these different Americans who spoke out about things, who didn't have like a big following, channels getting nuked, didn't have people speak up. It's like we're kind of training people to stay silent. We're training people to self-censor.
Yeah, but everything Trump said is true. And they had all of a sudden a blackout here in this town. Oh, and a flood there. And the way when you get reelected, a lot of that also is how the economy was doing prior to a new presidential election. And we all know that COVID was this whole thing just to shut us down and to make Trump look bad, because they couldn't get him out any other way. And they didn't want him from day one. My favorite photo still is that man or woman, whatever it is, with the glasses, like screaming to the top of its lungs. I love that person. Like, I want to meet that person to see where he or she is and like what they think of what's going on now. With that said, what are your thoughts on the new Fox News? Like Tucker Carlson started releasing videos, and I feel that they were silenced. Now you have the Dominion voting machine lawsuit. Have you been following that?
No.
Okay. So Dominion machines they're suing Fox News for putting out misinformation about their machines. And now Fox News issued an apology about it, that they were mistaken.
Oh, see, that's what I'm saying. I feel like everybody's being paid off and everybody's kind of like in cahoots with one another. And there's like, at this point, it's like just burn down the whole system. It's all fucked up. And I feel like if we can't even collectively acknowledge that there's voter fraud, that's the problem. And what's so crazy to me is like, if you watch the film, we use a lot of news footage from in the 70s and 80s. And back then, they were at least acknowledging that, hey, there is voter fraud. It is happening. Whereas in 2020, they're like, no, it's not happening at all. Never happened. Most secure election. They're not even acknowledging. And I feel like because people were wearing the mask, not getting oxygen to their brain, being kind of trained and controlled, people are just like not accepting that, hey, even in the 70s and 80s, they told us that voter fraud was happening. But now here in 2020, we're just supposed to believe that it's never happened before ever. And you're just accepting that propaganda, So I think that the issue is that, even though you and I are like, you and me, Jasmine, are like, yeah, it's so freaking obvious. There are people walking around and wearing masks in their car who truly believe that this was the most secure election in all of history. And that is the issue. So, and there are people out here who believe Dylan Mulvaney is a woman. So, we've got a lot of people who are just so being easily manipulated and brainwashed. That's why I really commend you for having your podcast and speaking out the way that you have. You're very brave to do this. Thank you, for having me on here and allowing me to speak. I mean, there's only really a handful of people who've really given me this opportunity to just be so freely speaking. And so I just really want to say thank you so much. And you're very
welcome.
brave.
It's an honor to have you because I think most people know I'm a conservative by now. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure. And then when I got back into pro wrestling, we have this whole mega MAGA faction, which you kind of wonder when you see my promos that I do. Wait a second, does she actually believe what she's saying? Because when I go all in, it sounds pretty real because it is real. I just go in all the way. I just get worked up by watching Fox News or CNN in the morning. Just watch the news and then go do the promo. And that's how I get worked up. That's all I have to do. Or watch libs of TikTok and start flipping out about whatever happens in schools. But the whole election, I don't know how we're going to fix this at this point. California, I know how they do things. In Europe, we don't have these problems. Florida doesn't have these problems. It's done in a day and that's it. When you've counted everything, here's a new president, here's a new prime minister, whoever, and here's a new governor. How do you think we're going to fix it at this point? What do you think is going to happen in 2024?
Well, I just tweeted this the other day. I'm like, won't it be funny? I'm like, when Joe Biden wins again, do you think people will believe in voter fraud? Is that what it's going to take?
Yes.
Joe Biden winning a second election. Do you think people might agree that, hey, something's messed up here? So
you think he'll win again? I heard Kennedy is supposed to run. If Kennedy runs, and then DeSantis might run. Anyone who votes for this you're a fucking idiot is what you are. Anyone who voted for this shit, you're fucking selfish is what you really are, because now we're all suffering.
Yeah, it's so wild to me. I would say the 4 years that Trump was in office was the most it just, even my personal life, I always feel was the most happiest, things were good. You could, food was still affordable. Now you go to the grocery store and it's my God, I couldn't believe 3 lemons for $1. I'm like, why are these lemons so goddamn expensive? 33 cents for a lemon? What?
In Texas? Well, that's cheap in California because we're paying way more. And I like those organic lemons. I put an apple cider in the morning. I put it on my face sometimes with this volcanic mask, and I need to use them. That's how you purge your pores. Plus it's all the smog and everything. So it is cheaper in Texas for sure. Did you see a huge difference with everything?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But the inflation is still affecting everything everywhere. But I will say this, part of the reason why we moved to Texas is because, like I said, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how all of this is going to be fixed. But one thing I do know is that I feel safer in Texas. I feel like at least here, people are not going to, I don't know. I'm if shit hits the fan, I'm at least, I don't know. I feel like Texas is where I'm supposed to be right now. Girl, you got to come on down. We would love to have you.
No, I want to come on down. Trust me, because if they also pass this whole act in California for reparations, which I think they're going to pass, that means that my tax dollars have to go to people whose ancestors were possibly slaves. Now, I do know a lot about the gold rush history because I studied all the brothels in the Panamint Valley. Anything about brothels in that era, you ask me, and I could tell you off the top of my head. but they did not have slaves here in California. So, and if they did, it's very far and few between, but how do you prove that? And now let's say you have one family that's getting reparations, the $2 million that Gavin Newsom wants to give them. And then you have like a Latino family there whose tax dollars have to go to them. And then an Asian family whose tax dollars have to go to them. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to be a war.
Well, and also it's like, okay, if we're just giving everybody $2 million, it's like, well, then you know what? Lemons are going to be like $5 a lemon. That's what's going to happen. Inflation is just going to rise even more. You're going to be paying $5 for a lemon, and we're going to be like, the US dollar is going to go down to like pesos. So what's going to happen?
But then it's time to go to Europe. So you do well in Europe too, I think. Have you done any tours overseas? Like, where have you been that are so far besides Texas? Florida?
So, I've actually been to 23 countries, but I have not performed stand-up in all of those countries. I went when I was 19, I went on Semester at Sea, which is like a university cruise ship. So 500 college kids get on a university cruise ship. We went from the Bahamas to Spain, Italy, Turkey, Bulgaria, Croatia. So I turned 20 in Croatia. Then I've just done a lot. I did a lot of traveling in my early 20s, right before I did stand up, which is also why I think, which is also what helped me get into stand up, because what I noticed is when I was in Europe, nobody treated me like weird for being small. In fact, people thought I was like a celebrity of sorts. So, it was very funny how differently I was treated in different countries, where it was, like in America 12 years ago, it was like I was kind of feeling outcasted. Whereas like when I was walking around Europe, people were like, who are you? So it's just very funny. Life has a weird way of working out, and then also like I remember when I first got to LA, like I met other people with disabilities. The first time I went to like a disability conference was when I was living in California, and that really helped me a lot too, be more accepting of my disability, because I went to this event called Life Rolls On, and I met this little girl who was 7 years old, and she had spina bifida like me, but she was in a wheelchair and she couldn't walk. And it was the first time, Jasmine, that I really was kind of like faced with the fact that like, oh wow, like my disability is like really serious, because I spent so many years, like I said, hiding it, not talking about it, and also like not even giving myself like enough credit for what I have been able to do. I mean, when I was born, they told my parents that I'd never be able to walk. I probably wouldn't live past the age of 13, and I would have extreme learning disabilities, and now here I am, a 31-year-old married homeowner. Like they did not see that in my future, right? So when I went to this disability conference and I met this little girl, it made me realize, like, you know what? I'm going to wear what I want to wear, because I used to be really insecure. I would not wear skirts because my legs are so skinny, and I felt really insecure about that. So I wouldn't wear any skirts. I wouldn't wear dresses. At that moment, I was like, I'm going to wear what I want to wear, because there are kids out here who have the same disability as me. And I want to show them that like anything is possible, and that, you should just go out and be confident in who you are despite your disability. And so in a lot of ways, like I do like how the world has become more accepting of people with disabilities, but it's also just, it's like they wasn't like that when I was, growing up.
Well, you look perfectly fine on CPAC with those cute little boots and that hat. And yet I remember you had some either shorts or a short skirt on, but you definitely stood out because you had the outfit on and you're just like so cheery. And Steve Ben looked extremely excited to see you, which is wonderful. And I'm still like, I'm just wondering, and I know I keep bringing this up, but for the past year, everyone else but me has met Michael Lindell. I even tweeted at him, you look exotic. What is your background? I just want to know if he's like part Native American because of his cheekbones or something. And it's like, I want to talk to him about his book because I like his book. And he makes the best towels in the world, and his slippers are to die for.
Well,
Yes,
we
that's
have
my
to go
Michael.
to another conference together and just
What?
find him. We'll have to go to another
I
conference.
know. Then there'll be a restraining order intact or something, Lila. I have to go
No,
with you.
I will bring you right up to him.
Oh my God. Then I'll be like, oh my God, this is my pillow guy. I have a signed bobblehead someone gave me. So I didn't actually like get to meet him to sign it. But when I see him, I want to take photos.
Yes.
I did a fake like My Pillow, My Towel ad. with the key line was nothing comes between me and my pillow towels. So I did that. I even sent it to him. So I'm just like, it's like anything just to speak to him because of his book. And it's a fascinating book too. You should come out with a book as well, because you've gone through quite a bit,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it's
thank
very
you.
inspiring. This is female empowerment. Like, you're an empowering person from what you were born with to where you are now. It's really a great story. I think it's
Thank
wonderful.
you. You are so
It's true.
awesome, Jasmine.
I try. I only like awesome people. But if people want to find out, so you got your documentaries. I want you to give us your website with the documentaries and what your tour dates are coming up.
So you could just go to lilahart.com, LILAHART.com. That's my website. And then if you go to lilahart.com/documentary is where you can find all the documentaries. And then I'm actually going to be in Vegas on April 27th, performing at the Stratosphere, featuring for Chrissy Mayer. And then at Hyenas in Dallas, May 5th and 6th, I will also be featuring for Chrissy. We have 4 shows that weekend.
That's good. I'm so glad. I didn't see her when she was here in San Diego. I was on the other coast. So next
Man, we
time.
would have. I was.
Yeah, I
with
wanted to
her.
go so bad. I think I was on her podcast that day, shortly on her one of them, the live stream. But we were supposed to do a live stream from Trump Tower also another time from the 45 Grill. And I think he's going to beat all those charges, like I'm hoping. But yeah, so let's definitely stay in touch.
Yes,
Please.
have
'Cause
you
I'd
been
love to have you in my
on?
live stream when I have the live stream with like open forum questions from people who are, in the political realm. So, and definitely maybe CPAC or a Turning Point USA event. I don't know, one of those.
Yes, let me know if you're ever back in Dallas too, or if you decide to come move here, because we'd love to have you.
Thank you. Well, sit tight, my dear. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I hope you're enjoying the ride on Crazy Train with Jasmine St. Clair podcast. So if you are, do me a huge, huge favor. Woo! Please go ahead. Go on to Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever, but Apple's great. Give me a nice rating and review. Send me a screenshot, and I promise you, I will send you a special goodie bag. So please rate and review Crazy Train with Jasmine St. Clair podcast. And in exchange for that, once I see the DM with the review and your name and address, I will get those gift bags out to you. I'm not going to tell you what's in it.